everyone, welcome back or welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sharon and as a legacy-free Nia main, I have over 8,000 hours in Dead by Daylight. We do a lot of Dead by Daylight content on this channel, so I hope you enjoy it all. Today's video is going to be a new episode over Let's Talk About It series. I hope you will join me in discussing about what you think about today's subject. Let's get started with the video. Today's video is part 1 of my personal Dead by Daylight rulebook. Part 1 is the survivor side and part 2, which comes out next week on Friday, will be killer sided. Now let's start with the rules that I typically stay by as a survivor, how I wish other survivors would play when they're my teammates or when I'm their killer. Now before I'm gonna start with the rules, I would like to clarify one thing. These are my sets of rules. You are not forced to follow them, agree with them, or anything. Just please stay respectful towards them, as I am allowed to have my own rules and my own opinion on this game. Everyone has their own preferences and these are mine. If you are not willing to play by these rules, that doesn't make you an evil person. That just makes you a person that has a different perspective on this game than me. But I hope you will give my rules a try, a thought, and be open to maybe change a little bit of your own playstyle if you think that what I'm saying is logical. Now let's start with rule number 1. No teabagging. Now, this is probably the biggest rule in my rulebook, and I already know that there's some people listening rolling their eyes and think to themselves, not someone else overthinking what teabagging actually does. And to that, I say, bear with me, hear me out as to why I have a no teabagging rule. We all know that teabagging is a very hot topic in the Dead by Daylight community. Is teabagging toxic or is it not? Depending on who you ask, you will get a different answer. There are typically 2 groups to this question. Group A, who will say that teabagging is toxic, and Group B, who will say that it isn't toxic as it doesn't do anything to the game. Now, I have to agree with both sides, which I know can make this complicated. Technically, Group B is correct. Teabagging doesn't do anything. It doesn't give the killer a disadvantage, nor does it give the survivor an advantage. However, it is the emotions that killers feel through teabagging that, in my opinion, makes it toxic. When you're doing something purposely that is known to be toxic in this game, known to upset people and make them sad, it's something that I just don't agree with as a person. Why, as a human being, are you willing to make someone upset for basically nothing? The argument is it doesn't do anything, so why be upset? My counter argument is, if it doesn't do anything, then why do it if it makes someone upset? It kind of is like the term gen rushing, where killers get upset when generators get done too quick. But that's the point of the game. Survivors are meant to escape. Survivors are meant to do the objective, which is generators. Even though it might upset killers that generators get done quick, you have to do them as survivor because it's your goal of the game. But teabagging isn't. It doesn't give you anything. If it would give you an advantage, like let's say it would give you an extra speed or anything, it would make sense to do so. But in reality, you actually lose distance because you choose to teabag, aka stand still, making it so the killer catches up quicker. Now once again, Group B isn't really wrong. Someone essentially shouldn't really get super upset at something so basic as teabagging because it doesn't do anything. But to me, people don't choose to get upset. It just happens. No one sees the teabag happening and is like, I think I should be mad at that, so I'm gonna be mad at that. No, it's just emotions that happen and they overcome, and it sucks for the person because the person doesn't want to be upset at it. The person doesn't want to be affected by it, but it just happens. Of course, some people take it too far when they get teabagged and tell people to off themselves or, go throwing around slurs. And that's, of course, not okay. Like, that is nowhere near as serious as teabagging. And you should never, ever compare it to such. But to me, knowing that a teabag can ruin someone's game, ruin their day, whether it's logical or not, it's just worth to not teabag for me. And yes, if you sometimes watch my stream, there are moments where I do teabag. For example, when a killer is an absolute ass from the beginning of the game, I sometimes teabag to express my frustrations. Or when I want to distract the killer and lure them away from wherever the killer is currently at. But it's very rare where you will catch me teabagging, and especially when I have no, air quotes, legit reason to do so. And that's just it. I don't like to upset people, and knowing that teabagging can upset people, whether someone is fragile or not, that's not the argument here. Knowing that it can upset someone is something that I prefer not to do. I have a lot of empathy. Some people, some people will see it as a game, and it is a game. I try to look at DBD as a game, but I still don't want to ruin anyone's day. I still don't want to ruin their game. So personally for me, I just don't teabag, as I know what it can result into, and that's just a rule that I like to follow myself. Now enough about rule number 1, let's go to rule number 2, no sandbagging. Now I think this one is pretty logical, but I try not to purposely sandbag my teammates. And whilst you might think this is standard, there are some survivors and content creators who purposely find it enjoyable to sandbag each other into the games. Whether you if you do it to a friend, that's fine, if you have a little banter with a friend going on, whatever. But to me, I don't like to do it to randoms. I think, it's kind of lame. Sure, there are very rare moments where I will sandbag someone that has pissed me off, but typically, even if a survivor pisses me off, I just don't. I don't sandbag for 2 reasons, honestly. 1, I typically need that survivor. Once you lose a survivor in your game, the game becomes 10 times more difficult and frustrating. And making it more difficult for yourself is not something I like to do. I like to have pleasant games. I don't like to stomp on killers, but I like to have, not very frustrating, annoying games. Challenging, sure, but there's a difference between challenging and annoying. And unfortunately, DBD can get annoying real fast. So removing one survivor after you sandbag them just adds up to that frustration and makes the game difficult. And I just purely have no interest in doing so. But the main reason that I don't sandbag is that I prefer to set a good example to this community. Unfortunately, there are a lot of toxic players in this game and a lot of toxic content creators, which has kind of poisoned this community. And unfortunately, that is just how games go as well. That's unavoidable. But I think it's nice when content creators care a little bit more about each other and try to set a good example. And that's always what I try to be. I try to be a good example for this community. And yeah, I think no sandbagging is one of the good examples that I would like to set. So yeah, that's another rule that I personally go by as I play Dead by Daylight. Rule number 3, no insulting in the endgame chats. Now, after a bad game, it's really easy to be like, screw you, or you're bad, or something along those lines to both your fellow survivors or the killer when they've pissed you off. But I purely refuse to do this. There are moments where I will be like, thanks for nothing, team. But apart from something super mild, I don't really type. I just say GG or leave the game. I just think this is a game. It's not that serious. And sure, it sucks losing sometimes or having something bad happen to you in the game. But in my opinion, it's not really worth dragging it on after the game, especially when you become very hostile and rude and start saying really offensive things to each other. The last rule is rule number 4, purposely doing other things when the game goes too fast. Now this is more of a preference rule, and I don't really expect people to do this rule, to follow this rule, but I wish that more people did. When I see a killer struggle in the game, where a lot of generators are done, whereas the killer barely has any hooks, I often go out of my way to do anything else in the game. Find people to heal, finding totems, doing chests, or just kind of running around minding my own business on the map. I do this because I truly believe that everyone deserves a fun game where they feel like they actually got to play the game, instead of just loading into a game and being done within 5 minutes because they couldn't keep up with the game state, they couldn't keep up with the pressure. And this goes for both sides, where killers kill people at 5 generators. Survivors do 5 generators within 5 minutes, where the killer has maybe have 1 hook or even 0 hooks. I just don't like it. It's not fun, it's not engaging, and unfortunately that's how Dead by Daylight is designed, where if one side has fun, the other side often does not. So I always try my best to think of it from a killer's perspective. Hey, would this game be fun in my perspective? Would I have an enjoyable time? No? Okay, let's try to do something about it. The best thing I can do is stop working on generators and try to see if the killer, gets some extra hooks in before the game ends. I think a killer will appreciate that if they know, and I would appreciate it if I were a killer. And honestly, I just wish more survivors would do this too, Look at the game state. Is the game state so far ahead? Do you not see a single threat? Is no one dead on hook? There's really no rush into ending games super quick. Of course, I understand it is the goal, and it's not necessarily your job to make sure that the killer has fun, but as I said once again, which I have mentioned multiple times, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I definitely am someone who repeats themselves a lot. I try to set a good example. I try to play this game how I wish others would play. I try to give perspectives on how I wish people could see this game. And for me, this rule is another important rule where I think it's important to think about each other's fun. And that's hard. I know it's hard because as a survivor main, no killer gives a fuck about your fun, Like, no one cares about that, but if you want to see change, you have to be the change, and I'm willing to be that change, no matter how hard it sometimes can be, no matter sometimes how hard I regret it. I want to do it. I want to be the change. I want to set a good example, and this is one of the examples I want to set. Give the killer more chances. It's not that serious. Just play the game, enjoy the game, delay it a little bit, so the killer could have some fun too. Like, that's all I'm asking for, and yeah, that's how I like to play. Now, I tried thinking of more rules that I implement in my Dead by Daylight games, but I think I pretty much covered them all. I truthfully think that if people kept themselves to these rules, the games would be much more enjoyable and less toxic than what it currently is. But once again, to clarify, you're not a bad person if you don't stick to these rules. You're not an awful person. It is your game. You can play however you want, but I do hope you will take these rules into consideration, actually think about what I said during this video, and perhaps my perspective can change your mind and make you believe that, some of my rules would be fun to implement and some of my rules would be nice to implement for, for your own gameplay. Now, that's the end of part 1 of my Dead by Daylight rulebook. As this is an episode of Let's Talk About It, please let me know in the comment section whether you agree with these rules, which rules do you have for yourselves, do you have any other rules that you play by, and anything else towards this subject. Honestly, I love to get everyone's perspectives and ideas, and yeah, I'm totally open to read everything that you think about my set of rules. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Stay tuned for part 2, the Killer Dead by Daylight rulebook, that comes up next week. But for now, I'm gonna ask you to do the things that every YouTuber always asks you to do. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. See y'all next time. Bye bye!